good way to go
All
forward.
right. 1 second here. Hey, this is Liam. But we got to do this first. All right. We have an extremely special guest today. This is Liam O'Meara, who is the Democratic candidate for Congress in California's 42nd District. Liam, how are you doing this morning?
Good. Yeah, got to be here.
Right. We were just off air. We were letting Liam know that we have been starting out with a small gratitude exercise because the rest of the show tends to be, oh look, everything is burning down. But we're really, really excited to have somebody like you, Liam, who is definitely on the proactive, working diligently to get into power so that we can actually start fixing things, which is fantastic. So I'm just gonna start things off on the gratitude thing and say thanks for doing what you're doing. Thank you for doing the work to run, which I know is grueling. Thanks for putting yourself out there. Thanks for being an example to, hopefully a lot of other people that will be doing the same thing. And of course, if you're commenting or if you're here watching this, throw in some gratitudes. We'll read them out. So Greg and Liam, or Liam, you guys could go next.
Yeah, Liam, tell us what you're grateful for this morning.
Well, I'm grateful for...
Not to put you on the spot, but...
Just to build off what Corey said, I'm grateful for a lot of people that have been supportive of the campaign. I never really saw myself as being a politician or the politician type. I'm much more of an egghead, an introvert. I was quite happy moving into education because I can then challenge people and try to make the world a little bit better that way. But politics has been an interesting experience here for me, and I'm just amazed and constantly humbled by the amount of support that the campaign has gotten. Given that we are trying to push back against decades of mismanagement and a world on fire, it's nice to see that there's so many people in the area that really do have an interest in that and hunger for that.
Right on. My gratitude is similar to yours this morning, except actually more similar to Corey's. I'm grateful for you for running, right? And I'm especially grateful for those that are running on progressive platforms and ideas in red areas, in areas that generally haven't opened their hearts and minds to this kind of thinking. We have a local candidate for our state legislature named Danny Antonino, and Daniel is running against a congressional a state house representative that literally had "We support the full Trump agenda" on her campaign literature in the last cycle. And we're in a county that is completely managed by Republicans. Almost every elected seat, county commission, tax collector, the entire structure is run by red meat Republicans. And I'm just really grateful to people that are stepping into that and running on progressive platforms. And I think we're changing. I think we live in a county where something like 50% of our families are below the United Way ALICE score, asset limited, income constrained, employed. Half of the households in our county, and we have to change something. We're going to have a lot more homeless people and a lot more stress on our housing ability to house people. And we have to make that better. We're not going to make that better with the status quo. So grateful to folks that are stepping into that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I often point out that less than half the people in the Inland Empire make a living wage, and this is completely unsustainable. And I think that more people do need to be running races like this in redder areas. I've long lamented that the Democratic Party has put less of an emphasis on challenging red districts and tends to play much more in the safer urban seats. They'll wait until the Democratic registrations have already passed half before they bother to get involved. And we need to be out there changing minds and actually challenging people and trying to frame issues or message things in a way that makes sense to them. And if people, if more of us are doing that, we'll actually change the country. If we keep chasing after our bases, we're going to get nowhere.
Yeah, I ran for mayor in my small town last year. You may remember, Liam, the news story where a local mayor fired on a SWAT team while they were trying to serve a warrant at his house. That's my town. That's Port Richey, Florida. So I ran for mayor last year. And the knock on me was that I don't own a home, so I don't have any skin in the game, right? That since I don't pay property taxes, I don't have any idea about economics, that I'm poor, therefore.
I rent too, you know?
Yeah. Like half of Port Richey rents, but not the half that votes, apparently, because I didn't do so well. But the knock on me, what they were saying about me to run me down was, oh, clearly he doesn't understand economics. Well, you know, poor people absolutely understand economics. And we understand why we are poor. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. I understand we tend to think, those of us outside of California tend to think of California as monolithically liberal, right? But that's not the case. You live in an area of the state's extraordinarily conservative, correct?
No, actually, significant parts of the state are actually red. It's one of the things. It's actually one of the decent arguments people can make against things like the Electoral College and even towards things like more significant reforms like proportional representation, because a lot of people in this country are systematically disenfranchised. There are a lot of liberals and leftists in Mississippi whose voices will never count. And there are a lot of solid red Trump Republicans in California whose voices just don't count much. There aren't that many statewide electeds left or in the congressional delegation. There's only 3 Republican Congress critters in all of Southern California. So they're definitely outnumbered in terms of the delegation we send to Washington, but that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of people.
Right. So you're running against one of those, is that correct?
I am, yeah, against a 28-year incumbent who frequently shows up as one of the most corrupt people in Congress and who has been bragging that he has voted with Trump 98% of the time.
Awesome. Do we want to say the name of this congressional representative?
Ken Calvert.
Okay. Not a name I recognize, but
yeah. You know, and honestly, that's part of the problem, and one of the reasons that I will mention him. A lot of times they tell you, "Don't talk about your incumbent by name. You're just driving people to them." And they're like, "Well, I kind of want to because he thrives on anonymity. Most people in this country have never heard of him.
Right.
He's in 28 years never chaired a committee. I mean, he was caught in his first term with a young prostitute by the police in Corona here, and no one cared. I mean, he's never managed to actually pick up any kind of real national, attention for what he does. I mean, the FBI investigated him because of corrupt land deals. I mean, he purchased a big chunk of land that he knew he was going to pass an earmark that would increase its value, doubled its value, and sold it doing nothing at all. I mean, it's basically the real estate version of insider trading, and he got away with it because no one's even heard of this guy.
Yeah, we've been fighting that at the local level here. We have a county commissioner that's been doing that for his entire tenure as a county commissioner, buying things and then, working to develop just specifically that area of his district and nothing else. So we can relate. All right, so let's talk about your platform, though. Why don't you tell us, first of all, why are you running? Why did you decide to run and run now? Let's talk about that.
Well, why run and why run now are slightly different questions for me. So I'll try to remember to hit both of them. The why running, it comes of recognizing more than 40 years of consistent decline in the real economy. You mentioned people not understanding economics because they don't own a house. Honestly, that's a misunderstanding of economics because your household budget and the economy are completely different things. And people tend to have no real idea how they're separate. But the policies that we pass in Washington have a really big impact on ordinary people's lives, and we've been doing exactly the wrong thing. And it just bothers me that this country is slipping farther and farther down. We're now 27th in social mobility, 17th in living standards, and that includes the lives of the filthy rich in there. we used to be the land of opportunity that people would want to come to. This was a country that anyone could move to. You didn't have two nickels to rub together and your kids would do better than you. Every single generation until mine did better overall than their parents' generation. At Gen X, we stopped and started slipping in the opposite direction. The millennials are worse off than the Xers. And the poor Generation Z kids coming out now, and I have to look my students in the eyes and realize, you know what? We have basically sold out your future. We're going to put you thoroughly in debt. We're never going to give you a good enough salary that you're going to be able to move out from your parents' house, and then we're going to blame you for it. And I can't do it. So
I've been told authoritatively that it's all the avocado toast is why they're not prospering.
Of course, yeah, avocado toast, yeah, and they want to live in their parents' basements and play video games.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I mean, who wants an independent life? Gosh, no.
Right. Well, you privilege people that have basements. We live in Florida. We don't even have basements.
Yeah,
in California, you don't either. I mean, it's just houses are almost built on concrete, basically.
Right.
On.
Just to we got some comments, we had a bunch of gratitudes coming in, and thank you guys for those. Fred asks if you are a supporter of UBI.
Absolutely, and I actually have been for decades. It frustrates me that an idea that was almost mainstream in the 1960s had to wait until this presidential cycle to come back into the mainstream. And it's still something that most politicians won't touch. It is, if you want to solve poverty, you need to put money in the hands of ordinary people. That's it. It's what works. And at that point, people can buy the things that they need and the things that they most need to get ahead. And people know that a lot better than you do. So a lot of our basic approach to social welfare is simply broken. I would like to, and one difference between me and several people who would support basic incomes is I wouldn't actually dismantle any other parts of the welfare state certainly in the short run, because the whole point for me is to solve poverty. Because so you're giving the poorest people a better leg up than the people who are already better off, and then over time, as some things become less necessary, then you can start looking at some of that. But the idea is to let everyone prosper, to let everyone get some of the benefits of living in the wealthiest society in the history of the world.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And even keeping the current welfare system, you're still going to be disincentivized to work to whatever extent is normal in that system, right? So it'll be interesting. Now, granted, like you're already making some more money or whatever, but like the idea that we would just start rifling stimulus into the bottom instead of constantly rifling it into the top. Like, we were talking a little bit before. I was showing these guys a picture of, I'll pull it up in a little bit here, but there's like a giant tree, and in the middle of that tree, there's a giant fire, and that's the current economy. And Greg was asking, why it's still going well, and it's because they're constantly throwing hundreds of billions of dollars into the stock market. So to rich people, right, to support a stock market price without any connection to reality whatsoever. And they're doing that to the tune of trillions of dollars a year now, which is more than what a UBI would cost, and actually make an economic difference for real people.
Yeah, it frustrates me, and this is just me coming at this as a historian. In the 1960s, 90% of transactions in the stock market were in the real economy, and today it's about 10%. There's almost no relation whatsoever between the speculation that happens on Wall Street and ordinary people's finances. So propping it up is just welfare for the rich. That's it. It's funneling cash into the hands of people who don't really need it. But if you put money in the hands of ordinary people, they spend that money. If you give me a raise, right? I mean, and like most people in America here, I'm just getting by. You give me a bit of a raise, I'm going to spend more money. I mean, because there are things that I need that I continually put off purchasing. If I buy things, I'm helping all those stores that sell things and all the distributors who bring the things to the stores to sell things and everything else. It feeds an entire chain. There's a whole ecosystem in the economy that we're ignoring by funneling cash to Wall Street. And I think that has to change.
So my curiosity is piqued by this. I want us to go off on a little bit of a side branch about what you said about investments in the stock market in the 60s were in the real economy. Explain what you mean by what's. I'm legitimately. I'm not fishing for an answer. I actually don't know what you mean by the real economy versus what's invested in the stock market now. Can you lay that out just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question because I try to make that contrast because we're accustomed to seeing media reports that talk about the economy in terms of the markets or unemployment statistics. Those are the two most common things they'll throw out there. If unemployment is low and the stock market's doing great, we have a great economy. And that's frankly a load of bullshit. The real economy is my ability to buy things and that entire ecosystem. It's the money circulating around among ordinary people. Economics, at the end of the day, is the circulation of money. That's really kind of it.
Okay, but so okay, well, I guess what I'm asking for then is like an example of an investment in the real economy from the 60s. You talk, I'm
connected to the
I
market.
need sort of an illustration.
So take a look at the values of a lot of current companies, right?
Right.
So General Electric is a pretty big company, right? I mean, they'll make everything from appliances to nuclear reactors. They employ tens of thousands of people. Huge company, right? Stock price usually around $30. And then what is Apple? It's like a bunch of nerds in Cupertino, and and then they send all the manufacturing off to different vendors overseas. It employs very few people, and massive stock price, right? It's based upon what people want something to feel good. Like I want this thing, so I'm going to chase after that. But it's not really connected to what value it produces. The number of people that GE employs alone produces a far greater economic impact because all those people with salaries are buying things and engaging in the real economy. So
Got it.
It should be worth more than these tech companies.
Right.
Yeah. The way I and we talk about this sometimes, like the when you have sort of the P&E ratio is a number that people in Wall Street used to pay attention to, right? And that's basically a function of what your actual economic activity is as a function of your stock price. And then, Warren Buffett's rule that we talk about all the time, when the stock market disconnects from GDP, and GDP is just the actual gestalt amount of economic activity of any kind, right? In the country, even that, including all of Wall Street, because it includes all of that stuff in that number, is like dramatically off kilter now, right? Like basically, Warren Buffett talks about taking most of his money out if that number hits like a 35% and it's at 70.
Yeah, and honestly, the GDP itself is a lousy indicator of. I mean, what I do for a living, and I will work anywhere between 50 and 80 hours a week, and what I do contributes nothing to GDP. I'm completely unproductive as far as it's concerned. Education, healthcare, childcare and elder care, the arts, none of it counts. That's one of the rationales for supporting basic income too. Is you're actually people to take on jobs that you might not be able to make it in. A lot of people can't make it in education. They try to get in and then they realize, I'm going to make like 25 grand. Yeah, I'll just starve to death. It's not going to work for me. And they go and they find another job.
Right. I am actually on SSI, and the benefit from SSI is pitifully small. But the $300 a month I make in mental health counseling has actually reduced the amount I get from SSI. It's crazy. Like I would be making more money if I quit the counseling job. I can't do that. First of all, I need that extra money to pay my bills because my rent is well more than half of my monthly income. But so the catch-22 there. And so my advocacy for UBI is fairly new, and it's an understanding that $1,000 a month would change my life dramatically. Right. It would allow me to buy appliances and furniture and things that I need, and not hurt myself at the same time. And there are so many people I know. When I think about every waitress, every line cook, every drywall hanger, having that extra, that extra money to do with what they want. And they'll just waste it on. Well, no, it'll go right back into our economy again. It's not wasted money. It's in our economy. So
yeah, anything spent is realistically not being wasted, even if it's not something that you would have chosen to purchase. And
right. Yeah, we live in like a 100% service economy based on retirees moving here in West Central Florida, and there's no industry here. There's no manufacturing. There's no commercial fishing. There's no underlying. We used to have a citrus industry that's long gone because of citrus blight. They had to like tear up and burn all the groves. So even farm work is incredibly limited here. When we totaled up what my zip code alone would get in UBI money pumped into our economy every month, it was shockingly huge. There's never been an economic boon like that in the history of my community. It would be world changing for us, and we just can't understand why people aren't getting how beneficial it would be.
It would, and it would directly impact tons of rural communities all across this country that struggle to hold on to people and to attract industries. You would suddenly have the money there that would keep those industries in the area instead of people having to constantly leave and move off to places where the cost of living is so insanely high.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we like the idea, like with $1,000. Sorry, Liam, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, we make these stupid arguments all the time, and I'm constantly seeing people recycle Victorian arguments about work and poverty, and that it's just a character flaw, and that if you give people money, they just won't work. And I mean, it fundamentally misunderstands human nature. We want to do things. Relatively few people would choose to sit around all day chronic and do nothing with their entire lives. And
I just want to point out I would be one of those people, though.
But they would still be buying things, wouldn't they? So even there, you're the economy. But most people would still choose to do something. And that's one of the nice things about actually empowering people to take on a lot of lower paid types of jobs. You're able to move into whole new industries, and really that itself is stimulating to the real economy.
Yeah, I can't argue that. I'm glad we're having this conversation, actually, and we're sort of preaching to the choir with our audience, because our people are mostly on board with this idea. I think they're universally on board.
Again, at least among activists, we have to push in for more electeds, and just to make a simple point related to the election, there are only a handful of us really running still in general election on a very explicit UBI platform. But the more of us you put in there, the more people who are going to stand on the floor of the House and demand relief for ordinary Americans instead of sucking up to Wall Street. And that starts to change the overall narrative. The more people talking about it in Congress, the more people are going to talk about it in the media, the more ordinary voters are going to support it, the more we can primary people and run good candidates and actually get real change.
Amen, dude. Amen. So tell us about your race now. How you doing? How can we help you win?
Well, the key issue for us here in these last couple of months is just to continue our outreach to people. We have to contact as many voters as we can, and that means running the phone banks and text banks. We can't be out knocking doors. That would have been the typical strategy. And even there, it's always difficult to hit enough people in a district as sprawling as this one is. But we're trying to, and this is one of the reasons that I'm somewhat grateful for having such a young and dynamic campaign team, is we adapted very quickly to the pandemic. We very quickly shifted to a digital strategy, and we've been increasing our outreach there. We've been running, several days a week. We're manning the phones and sending out text messages to people. Everyone is going to have heard from us tons of times, but all of that does still cost money. So anything people can contribute there. I've made the point since I got into this race, and it's getting a little bit less salient in the last 2 months, but still it plays long term. People are constantly buying coffees or whatever, right? And if you can afford the price of one Starbucks a month, give up one Starbucks a month to a progressive candidate somewhere, people will often think, gosh, why would I even bother donating $5? Who needs $5? Everyone's got $5 or something, right? And they misunderstand the amount of power that they have. Because if several thousand people give the price of one coffee a month, that's enough to win most House races in this country. And we tend to discount that, and because of that, because we take away our own economic agency there. We don't give the little bit that we can. We then force those candidates to chase after big checks from the wealthy donors. And this is why, I will stand on the floor of Congress and say, I think y'all need to be wearing NASCAR jackets with your owners on them. I think we should be forced to show up in public and let people know who really owns us. And that's something we can push back against.
Right. Just so catching up, folks that may have joined us late, Liam O'Meara is running for Congress in California's 42nd district. Is that right? I had the district right, which is Inland Empire, east of Los Angeles, like between Palm Springs and LA, basically. And he's running on a UBI platform, Humanity First platform. I'm assuming you are a Yang supporter.
I am a Yang supporter. In the primary contests, I back Bernie though. I've been a Bernie fan since the early '90s. I saw him tear into the Iraq War. I was like, yeah, I'm interested, and I've stayed interested ever since. There's a number of things that I think Bernie kind of gets wrong or doesn't put right, doesn't focus on enough, and he long had what I would consider problematic views on immigration because he didn't really understand automation. And this is one of the things that I think Yang is brilliant about. And we really needed to shake that up a little bit. So I was extremely enthusiastic about Yang entering the race. And he was a solid second choice there. And again, the whole idea of let's move forward here instead of constantly dividing people up into tribes. Some of the post-partisan sort of ideals there really resonate with me as well.
Yeah, so the ranked choice voting, I keep coming back to that, over and over and over and over and over again, right? Because it would allow us to have far more productive primaries, and obviously would allow us to have far more productive, general election campaigns as well. So that'll be fun. But I just want to get to Corey's comment. Gives a new punchline for this show: coffee. Donate a coffee a month to a progressive candidate. I don't hate that. That's pretty solid work. I would gladly wear a Leo O'Meara badge on my shirt for sure, and I would buy you a coffee because having you on the floor of Congress would be fucking fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah, sort of Squad West.
Realistically, one of the points that I try to make here is, as much as a lot of people love AOC and are cheering her on, and I am, and I've been noticing that Andrew's been doing that a lot lately, which is great. I'm happy to see that. And the other squad members, and we're going to have a few more this time around because of because of Bowman's win and whatnot in his district. He's definitely going to take the general. But we need 200 of them, and there's no way around that. A handful of people can start to shift the direction, but we have to build on that. And if we're supporting candidates all over this country and trying to flip these districts, get involved in primaries where you can, if there's a good progressive candidate there. If not, do what I'm doing and get involved in the generals and push back against the Republicans there, especially in the district. Mine's purple. This district could go either way. And it's always been like that. What it generally falls down to is low turnout among the working class and Hispanic population because no one's talking about the things that actually matter to them. And the fact that he's going to, Calvert's going to take in $1 million from the defense industry and land developers and just run radio and TV ads to the same safe voting population that always comes out.
So everybody will have heard his name.
Exactly. They've heard his name, but they'll have no idea what he actually stands for and is basically preaching to the same small crowd of people. We're not really expanding the electorate and reaching out to the people that don't feel heard by either of the major parties' platform. So I have going out there and talking about. I try to frame a lot of issues in terms of economics. I kind of use economic history as kind of like the center of a spider web for me, and connect different things into it. So hey, you've heard of Green New Deal, right? Do you know that it's an actual New Deal and that it would involve significant investment in the area and tons of sustainable, good-paying jobs and better education? The 42nd district is humongous and does not have a single university in it. So we're not producing the knowledge workers that we would even need. We need that kind of investment. Or like healthcare. You're talking about, okay, so the Medicare for all kind of issue, like, oh, it's a big scary government takeover. No, it's not. It would actually give you more freedom to go to whatever provider you want, because all it's doing is it's taking away the bean counters in the middle. It's putting a non-profit layer of bean counters in the middle there.
Right. It's taking away the leverage of networks providers.
Right now, they have an incentive to deny you coverage to make a profit, and they're much smaller risk pools, so the costs have to be much higher. Put everyone in the same risk pool, everyone's costs go down, and then take away that profit motive, and suddenly the only person making decisions about your healthcare are you and your physician, and you are going to get a raise. Medicare for all will be the largest pay rise in more than a generation.
Yeah, I like the idea of, when I have had to have this conversation with large business owners, one of the things I've said to them is, imagine, tote up how much you spend every month on healthcare coverage for your employees. Now take that completely out of your column. Wouldn't that feel nice? And their eyes light up. Okay, well, you call it socialism if you want, but you're going to have the freedom of that money to do other things within your business. Wouldn't that be a good, we started giving employees health insurance as a benefit in the 60s because it was cheap and easy to do. And it's not that anymore. It's the opposite of that for employers to have to hurdle through all that. But I think the other thing that I wanted to make sure and mention is this idea that that you're fighting, we're fighting a battle with good ideas against sort of an ideological stratification. Like there's just any of these ideas when they come up, every conservative I've talked to about them has like a knee-jerk, instant response without any kind of understanding of. And I hope you're better at having those conversations with conservatives than I am, because I get very frustrated that all the same information that I have available to me is available to them, and they're just not choosing to see. They're not even doing the basic math. And this, when we talk locally about homeless issues, this is what comes up. It would be cheaper for us to house them all than to leave them on the streets where they are. If your argument is fiscal responsibility, this is the fiscally responsible argument. But it turns out that's not what the problem is. The problem is they want to judge homeless people and punish them for bad decisions. Because the first thing they want to ask is, how did you become homeless? Which is probably the least important question we could be asking.
Yeah, and honestly, Democrats have fallen into rhetorical traps just for ages like that, because they'll take seriously the rhetoric that comes from the right, and then
a hand up, not a handout, right? That's
and they don't get it. I mean, they don't get that it actually is a kind of moral argument, and it's a different kind of morality, but it is a moral argument for them. And the argument is that they don't want to help people, regardless of whether it would actually help the entire economy, be cheaper for everyone, lower the crime and drug use. I mean, everything else they come up. We need more cops because of the crime. Well, how about you just change the conditions that caused crime in the first place? But that would be helping people. I mean, it's just so difficult.
We can't have that shit.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. Bill Hicks used to do a whole bit about that. Mushrooms open your mind and allow you to consider the lives and fortunes of other people. We can't have that shit.
No, keep that illegal. I do enjoy those conversations, honestly, and both in person. I mean, they're often. You can actually disarm people, I think, that if you approach them a bit honestly and you're willing to just hear their concerns. I think it helps, probably being a lifelong stoic, that I can kind of let it all just kind of roll over me and just keep going. And someone will lay out a position that would often throw up kind of defenses, get people angry, and then they yell at each other. But if you challenge someone, if you say, well, that's just stupid, you're just being illogical, immediately someone digs their heels in and they're not going to hear you anymore. It's like their ears just plug up. But if you kind of skirt it to the side and okay, well, I hear you, that's interesting. So here's what I think. And then you start talking about your shared beliefs. People often, it resonates more with them if you talk about what you believe instead of why they're wrong. And the key issue there is that you guys are probably aware that no one has ever won an argument on Facebook. No one has ever won one argument on Twitter. It's just not how it works. I mean, there's a simple psychological trick that we're missing here. People change their own minds. And all you can do is seed the information lay down some breadcrumbs, and if it makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And if you are honest and sincere and you talk to people openly, they're more likely to pick up some of those crumbs and chew on them later and say, you know what, that Liam dude made an interesting point. And that just starts their own journey.
I think where I get frustrated with that is that we can't have a rational conversation about whether we should leave the house or not when the roof is on fire, right? I don't see that we have time to baby people along and to maybe eventually, possibly, potentially coming around. Shit's on fire, and it's an urgent situation, and
I get that. I mean, global warming alone is enough of a situation there. Not to mention, like, you know, the pandemic and this little depression they put us into, and all kinds of other things that have been going wrong there. The problem is the sense of urgency. It doesn't help with the psychology. Where at the end of the day, humans are still humans, and they're still going to respond badly to the approach. So it honestly ends up then being counterproductive. It pushes us further back when we introduce some of that sense of urgency. I mean, in the long run, if we don't manage to fix this, and actually I think it's one of the I mean, Kennedy actually kind of got this right, you know, just saying that if you make peaceful change, you know, impossible, you're making violent revolution inevitable. I mean, if things don't get better, the whole thing is going to collapse. And where a lot of the accelerationists on the left bother me there, this country is a lot more likely to turn outright, you know, dictatorial. It's a lot more likely to turn fascist than any positive change. So
yeah, that's
realistically our only chance is to win these arguments.
That you're absolutely right. And just like, holy crap, America, this is where we are was the first response to this. So this is our president right now. Don't buy Goodyear tires. They announced a ban on MAGA hats. Get better tires for far less. This is the president of the United States. This is what the radical left Democrats do. And you have to capitalize the first letter of each one of those words. Otherwise, it doesn't count. You can play the same game. We have to start playing it now. Like, what the fuck? Because what, Goodyear tires is like, they're super radical left now. Maybe
yeah, it makes me wonder what Mike Pence's position in Hoosier tires is.
Oy. Like, you're absolutely right, Liam. When it comes down to, and Greg and I have been talking about this since, you know, 4 months before Trump's election and every day since that we've been on the air. Like, it can get so much worse, and the accelerationists are just sitting on a mountain of privilege. Like if you're that comfortable that you don't see how unbelievably bad it could get for you and for a lot of other people by allowing this to continue, then like that's, you know, and I love what you said about the fact that like we really do have to talk about, you know, what we believe to kind of make that pivot, right? Because I succumb to just preternatural rage far too often, and I own that doesn't work, right? Like in our little, you know, bubble community on this show or whatever, you know, we're explicitly not trying to convince, especially, you know, Trump supporters of anything. They're not welcome. You know, we don't talk to Nazis as a rule, but like, you know, it being able to make the affirmative case for where we want to go has to be how, you know, we win this. But goddamn, do we ever have to win this? And I was just looking at your race. What's his pickle won by like 6 points last time, which is hardly insurmountable. And I'm hoping that you guys are you know, wrapping Trump as an anchor around this guy's neck, because I mean, I think that's going to play.
It definitely makes a difference, especially, I mean, if the national opinion polls hold in the area. I mean, right now, Republicans are 37% of my district. Independents are the margin of victory in every single race. And right now, Trump is holding on to a 32% approval rate among independents. So Trump is a significant liability with exactly the people that Calvert needs in order to win. So that is important for us. But it's, but I mean, I'll make two quick points here. One is we have come closer in this district. In 2008, it was 45% Republican, and a Democrat came within 2 points of winning because he focused a lot more on those economic issues, on relatable issues there, instead of playing into the same culture war nonsense that a lot of the two major parties have been falling into for a long time. And the other really is that while I have very clear views on Trump, and especially me as a historian of ideas, I mean, I connected into a broader international neo-fascist drift here. I mean, right populism is extremely dangerous, but I won't blame the voters for it. And that, I think, is a difference, too. I mean, the person who ran last time in the district here, the approach to registering new voters was to walk up and say, do you hate Trump? And I do it because while a lot of people who did support Trump are supporting Trump because they are racists and nationalists and whatever here, those are people you're never going to get anyway. Don't worry about it. A lot of people heard him say, I'm going to bring jobs back to America. You've been getting a bad deal. These trade deals have been favoring only these big corporations and foreign countries and whatever here. I want to help you out. They heard the populist message.
Yep.
And one of the things about right populists in particular, this is one of the things that frustrates me so much about genuinely awful people like Steve Bannon, is that right populists often successfully diagnose the problems, but they're completely wrong in their solutions. The answers that they propose are going to make things worse, not better, but they did recognize that there is a problem. And a lot of people in this district heard that message and said, you know what? This might work. Trump won the 42nd by 12 points.
Yeah.
Significantly better than congressional races. And a lot of the people who voted for him, they voted for him because of that right populist rhetoric. And to me, the answer to a right populist is a left populist, not a milk toast.
I mean, you at least have to be able to speak to that same pain that got him elected. Otherwise, you're going to be shit out of luck.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why Yang resonated so much. The pain is real, right? The economic pain, and the lack of healthcare, all these different things. You can't just talk over that. And I think
right,
there's been centrist Democrats that kind of. I mean, you stay in power for a long time. You get a little bit disconnected from that. I think to greater and lesser extents. But yeah, so I'm glad that you're fighting the way you're fighting it, because I think you're right. I think that's the best chance to win.
And realistically, it's one of the reasons that I loved both Yang and Bernie, is that they do appeal to a significant part of the disenfranchised population in this country, the people who don't normally vote because they understand the politicians of both major parties are screwing them. They're working,
or at least not doing enough, right? Yeah. I mean, that's
some not doing enough, some outright just, not really caring much anymore. Or if they did care, they've like you said, they've lost touch. They no longer understand that what's good for the markets isn't necessarily good for us.
Right.
And they've just bought into the particular ideologies of the two major parties. And realistically, they're both wrong. I mean, they're both heading us in the wrong direction here, and we have to reorient our politics.
I mean, show over. Yeah, no, Liam, thank you so much for coming on, because I mean that it's inspiring to me, frankly, that somebody like you is not only running but has a really credible shot to win. Because having your voice in Washington it's just going to be a force for good. There you go. That's all I got about that.
I'll make the simple point that this race absolutely, and it frustrates that tons of outside analysts and the major parties will tend to write this off as a safely red district. It's nearly 40% Hispanic. It's only 37% Republican. The voting turnout is usually low 60s at best. I mean, it absolutely is a flippable district with the right message and the ability to get that message out there. We've often had neither of those. Right. What we have here is a message that's resonating with tons of independents. It is resonating with tons of disenfranchised people. And I have people who self-identify as conservative, who have come on as strong supporters of the campaign, and they know who I am. They know that I have views on a whole range of issues. And I'm very honest with them. We're not going to agree on every issue, but I'm going to show every time. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to do those town halls. I will debate every challenger who comes to the seat afterwards, and I will always be interested in representing you. And they hear me focusing on issues that do matter to them. Mm-hmm. Maybe the thing that bothers them the most about me is simply it's there. It's something that I care about, but it's not constantly in their face. Mm. And I think that's the real trick, is if you lead with the things where there's broad agreement, if you lead with the things that are going to improve people's lives, you're going to reach a much wider audience, and that opens more doors for us. to engage in a lot of these other conversations. But if we're just
Beautiful.
forcing people to dig their heels in on something that they hate to begin with, you're never going to get anywhere. If we let the two major parties divide this country along these culture war lines, so they can focus on things that are honestly not relevant to most of the voting population, then again, half the population of this country will continue to not vote at all, and we are going to continue to sink into oblivion. It infuriates me that the richest country in the history of the world is steadily falling in its living standards.
Yeah, can't disagree with that.
Preach. Yeah, absolutely. So we put your website up a little bit earlier, but we'll throw it up
again now
when we do the shares and stuff. Is there anything else that that you would like to have our family know before we break here?
Well, if no one else has any questions out of the audience, then I would just say, I just remind them that we have the ability to reach people here, that we can flip this district here, and we are continuing to make progress and change things. And if we can support races all over the country that are doing things like this, I mean, Kara Eastman's race is a good one there. There's tons of races out there that actually are winnable, and that we could not only get another good, solid progressive voice that wants to talk about the real issues, but we can also get rid of some really nasty Republicans. And these
we're having that fight in Florida now. Yesterday, we picked up several seats in the state legislature that were unexpected, including a state Senate seat. So, there is a groundswell, and we really wish you well. So what we want to make sure we tell our viewers here is not just that you can donate to Liam's campaign directly, but share the show on your feed, because if you have friends that are in his district in Southern California, they may see this and learn about a candidate they didn't know much about before. And we want to make sure that we give you the widest possible platform. We're mostly Florida centric, but we have a lot of folks in the thread right now from Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Iowa, all over the place. So we're excited for you, and we hope it goes well. Will you come back on once you're elected?
Sure. Yeah. Be my pleasure.
That'd be great.
That would be awesome.
Temecula. There's about a quarter of the city of Temecula is in the 42nd, a chunk of the north of the city, and then the entire wine country area is. So all the sort of hinterland areas, and then the outside communities like Winchester and French Valley are. But about 3/4 of the city of Temecula is actually in the 50th until we redistrict. It's beautiful. Some of the lines around here are bizarre.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Welcome to gerrymandering 2020. That's yeah.
I mean, the redistricting should actually do really well for us in the inland areas here. LA and Orange County are kind of in trouble because while some of the overall population has gone down, the population in our area has massively shot up. So LA is going to lose seats. We're probably going to gain some. So
great.
It's definitely going to change the game going forward.
All right.
I'm gonna let Corey show us out here, but
yeah. No, Liam, thank you again for coming on. We're super grateful. If you can think of anybody else that we should have on the one race you mentioned, I'll connect with your team and see if I can't chat with them as well. Obviously, if you can spare $5, donate it to Liam's campaign. And we'll take a look, Liam, as well, and I'll connect with your team to see about anybody that wants to help on text banking or what have you. We'll see if we can't recruit some people for that as well, and give you whatever help we can.
I'm actually reaching out to a handful of other candidates right now too. We're going to try and put together a sort of like coordinated sort of compassionate congressional sort of caucus, and
nice.
Try and help people in the general elections, because a lot of the bigger organizations now, they focus on the primaries, Brand New Congress, Justice Dems. But what about those of us who make it past our primaries and are now in the generals, but aren't getting the support that we would need from DCCC or the big outside vendors there, how we can help each other out. So keep your eyes out for an initiative there. We're going to announce that soon.
Yeah, we'll definitely let people know what's going on. I mean, that's going to be a critical move, especially
if
sorry, just in districts like yours, Liam, with the amount of independents that are there. I mean, that it really does seem like it's switchable, and it's not like winning the primary for AOC where she was in a district that was like plus 17 for Democrats or whatever. Sorry, Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, if you're putting together an event or a coalition like that, with people from other states. Look into Kimberly Walker here in Central Florida. She's running against Gus Bilirakis in Pinellas County, Pinellas Pasco County here in Florida. Outstanding person of color, great candidate, running against an entrenched Trump voting 98% of the time Republican herself. So, look into Kimberly Walker and see if you can pick her up for that coalition. That'd be very cool.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll reach out.
Yeah. All right. That's all I got. I was ready for the show. I was ready to talk about the Senate Intel report. Where, I really wanted to lead with John Cornyn says there was collusion. Ben Sass says there was collusion. I want to lead with that, but this is better. So, and then their addendum, says, but there's no collusion, even though we just signed off on a report that distinctly shows collusion and connections, not just to people who may have been connected, people who are actually Russian intelligence assets, Paul Manafort. We still don't think there was collusion. You jerks. Hey.
At the end of the day, it's all about whether your side wins and your donors benefit. And they just, too few people in Washington actually care about the American people now. They just want to play these games of division. It's endlessly frustrating.
Right on. Well, best of luck to you. We hope it goes well. We hope to be interviewing you as a member of Congress early next year. That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
That would be fantastic. Greg, you want to say the thing?
Oh, yeah. Sasquatch is real. Don't ask Liam. It's a long story.